Maybe just share your screen just while we do the intros. Thank you, Chair. We are now live on YouTube. I'd like to start the meeting.
Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Windsor and Ascot Development Management Committee on the 7th of December 2023. My name is Amy Teasey and I'm chairing this meeting. Excuse me. The meeting is being held in person and via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. Firstly, it would be useful if all panel members and officers could introduce themselves so the public are aware of who's in the meeting and the role they're undertaking. So as I said, I'm Councillor Amy Teasey and I'm the chair, and we'll go this way.
Councillor Mark Wilson, Vice Chair.
Councillor Julian Teasey, I'm a voting member of the panel.
Councillor David Buckley, voting member of the panel.
Councillor Alison Carpenter, voting member of the panel.
Councillor Julian Sharp, voting member of the panel.
Councillor Devon Davis, voting member of the panel.
Mikey Lloyd, Democratic Service Officer, and I'll be clerking this meeting.
Jo Richards, Development Management Team Leader.
James Overall, Principal Planning Officer.
Adrian Waite, Assistant Director of Planning.
Thank you. I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do, please state your name and your capacity in which you're speaking, if appropriate. I will also ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I'm able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed. We will now start on the agenda items. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have a couple of apologies tonight. We have apologies from Councillor Da Costa and Councillor Luxton.
Thank you, but no substitutes this evening. No. Okay, thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, so I'm the ward councillor for Clew and Edworth East, which the Sawyers Close development is in, but come here with an open mind. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I'm ward councillor for the St Leonards Road, Windsor development. I come here with an open mind.
Thank you. Okay, so sorry, Mark. Yeah.
Also ward councillor for the St Leonards Road development and the also the Stovell development.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have made that.
Next one. Yes, Councillor Buckley.
Declaration of ward councillor for Datchet, Horton and Raisbury of Broom Lodge. Thank you.
You don't have to. Okay, and the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on Thursday the 5th of October. Do we all agree that those are accurate? Yeah, thank you. Right, let's move to the first agenda item, and we will take them in order because I imagine we've probably got more people here for Sawyers Close than any other thing on the agenda. So we'll begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full planning application for the redevelopment of Sawyers Close to provide 413 dwelling houses in the form of apartments and townhouses spread across 9 apartment blocks and 7 rows of townhouses. It is important to note that on Thursday the 30th of March 2023, Cabinet unanimously approved the Sawyers Close Stakeholder Master Plan document as an important material consideration for the development management process. This stakeholder master plan document was required as the site is not an identified housing allocation within the borough local plan. However, the developer proposes a significant net increase of new homes, passing the threshold set out within policy QP1 of the borough local plan. Whilst the stakeholder master plan document does not form part of the development plan, nor does it carry the same weight as a supplementary planning document, it does set out the parameters in a formal and transparent manner and should be awarded considerable weight in the decision-making process. To give an overview of where Sawyers Close is located, this slide shows the site location in relation to Maidenhead, Windsor and Slough. This slide shows a more focused aerial perspective of the application site, which lies in the northwest of Windsor, south of the Maidenhead Road. The site lies approximately 860 metres east of the roundabout joining Windsor Road and Maidenhead Road, both forming the A308. The site location plan can be seen within this slide, the existing site location plan. This slide shows the key constraints in the area. You will note that the application site lies outside of the Greenbelt, but does lie within flood zone 2, with the setting of the Thames boundary located northwest of the site. The existing site contains a local area of play, as well as partially containing a public park and garden. The site does not contain any tree preservation orders, but you will note a couple of single TPOs northeast of the site. This slide shows the site layout plan, where it can be seen that 2 accesses will serve the site. The northernmost access is an existing access off the Smiths Lane, which the proposal seeks to utilise, and the southernmost is a new vehicle access, which will be created off Smiths Lane, adjacent 149 and 151 Smiths Lane. The slide shows the site-wide ground floor, with each colour indicating a different on-site use. The colour key is shown on screen, but in brief, the blue indicates residential areas, light orange are cycle stores, the dark orange in the northwest is the proposed cycle hub, the pink areas are communal spaces, and the grey areas are lobbies serving the apartments. This slide shows an artist's impression of the proposed scheme from an aerial perspective. This slide shows the heights of the proposed buildings. The tallest buildings are blocks A2 and B2, each having 8 stories, whilst A1, A3 and D2 comprise 7 stories. Plot C consists of buildings with 5 to 6 stories. It should be noted that Plot C1, which is predominantly 6 stories, does contain a 5-storey element, and Block C3, which is predominantly 5 stories, does contain a 4-storey element. The proposed townhouses are 3 stories, and the podiums set between each plot have a height of 1 story. Going back to uses, although this time focusing more on those outside the buildings, this slide shows the location of play areas within the site, as well as the proposed community orchard and gardens. The sunken garden located in the southeast of the site will provide amenity space for residents and visitors, whilst also doubling up as a mitigation strategy for surface water flooding. This image also does well at displaying the undercroft podium parking, which will only be available to those residents within each block. For example, parking with undercroft podium B would only be available to residents within blocks B1 to B4. The next few slides will run through the floor plans and elevations of the proposed buildings, starting with the site-wide plans. I've only included ground floor plans level 00 and second floor plans level 02, as well as the roof plans to save repetition. This particular slide shows the ground floor site-wide plan, and this slide shows the site-wide second floor plan, and this slide shows the site-wide roof plan. From a site-wide elevational perspective, this slide shows the western elevation with plot A on the left, plot B in the middle, and plot D on the right. The faint elevations in the background behind plot B represent the buildings within plot C. This elevation shows the eastern elevation of the site, as seen from the Dedworth Manor and Sawyers Close Park. Plot C is on the left and plot A is on the right. The faint elevations in the background are of plots D and B. Looking at the northern, looking at the northern elevation, the Maidenhead Road perspective. This slide shows plot A. It should be noted that these elevational drawings do not show landscaping. However, this can be viewed later in the presentation through some CGI computer-generated images. This slide again shows the northern elevation of the site, however, this time from within the site with a focus on the north elevations of plots B and C. I will again run through plans and elevations, however, now with a focus on the individual plots. Starting with plot A, this slide shows the ground floor. This slide shows the second floor of plot A, and this slide shows the roof plan of plot A. To better visualize this slide shows a coloured aerial perspective of plot A. As for the elevations, this slide shows the north and east elevations of plot A, and this slide shows the south and west elevations of plot A. Moving on to plot B, this slide shows the ground floor. This slide shows the second floor of plot B, and this slide shows the roof plan of plot B. Again, to better visualize this, a coloured aerial perspective of plot B can be viewed on screen. As for elevations, this slide shows the east and north elevations of plot B, and this slide shows the south and west elevations of plot B. As for plot C, this slide shows the ground floor, this slide shows the second floor, and this slide shows the roof plan of plot C. Once again, this is provided in colour for visual purposes. Moving on to elevations, this slide shows the east and north elevations of plot C, and this slide shows the south and west elevations. The final plot is D, with this slide showing the ground floor. This slide shows the second floor, and this slide shows the roof plan of plot D. Again, a slide is provided with this plot displayed in colour. This slide shows the east and north elevations of plot D, and this slide shows the south and west elevations of plot D. Moving on to materials, a range of materials have been selected to allow for different combinations to be used across the scheme. This helps to create distinct character areas within a cohesive whole, thereby contributing to the overall placemaking of the site. This slide gives an overview of how different materials are used across the site. The larger areas of apartment roofs provide opportunity for green and brown roof planting. To help visualize the scheme, the next few slides will display computer-generated images of the proposed scheme. The viewpoint direction of each CGI can be noted by the pink arrow overlaid on the coloured site layout plan in the bottom right of each slide. This particular CGI looks northeast from the outside of block D2 towards the community gardens. This CGI is taken from within the community orchard garden, looking south towards the community garden. This CGI is taken from the southeast corner of the site, from within the sunken garden. This CGI looks just outside the community orchard garden towards block C1. And this CGI looks out from the community garden between blocks B and C, with the view directed towards block D2. This CGI shows the frontage of the townhouses within plot D, located along Smith's Lane. And lastly, this CGI shows the site for Maidenhead Road, taken from the northwest of the site. Finally, moving on to site photos, I'll flick through these without too much discussion, as they are pretty self-explanatory. For orientation, the photos are taken from east and move around the south to finally face from the west. And this transition hopefully gives an idea of how the site is proposed to change. To wrap this up, the application is recommended for approval subject to the satisfactory completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure 30% on-site affordable housing, which is the equivalent of 124 dwellings. This is split by 56 social rent, 43 affordable rent, 25 shared ownership. Section 106 will also secure a contribution to the Council's carbon offset fund totalling £688,994, which is split by £216,522 for building emissions and £472,472 for lifestyle. Section 106 also secures the on-site play provision consisting of locally equipped areas of play, of which and 4 local areas of play. As well as open space, on-site biodiversity net gain, the travel plan, a highways contribution to secure a signalised junction between Smiths Lane and Maidenhead Road, of which the financial contribution is still up for negotiation, and also the on-site cycle hub. To give some information on the cycle hub, this is to be in partnership with the Windsor Cycle Hub and will house their activities as well as an e-bike hire scheme and facilities for repairs and the hire of bicycles. The Windsor Cycle Hub is a charity run by volunteers which is currently based at the Swan in Clewer. Their key objective is to increase the accessibility of cycling in and around Windsor. Their website notes that a repair service is free for minor issues, and they also offer safety checks as well as organising guided rides. In addition to the Section 106, the recommendation is subject to the satisfactory completion of a Section 278 legal agreement to secure the on-site parking bays along Smiths Lane. These bays will be set in so they do not disrupt the flow of traffic along Smiths Lane. The recommendation is also subject to the conditions noted within Section 14 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right. We have 3 public speakers this evening, as you might expect. So we'll start with our public representative, Sonia Robinson. Are you here, Sonia? Hello, would you like to come forward? There's a microphone at the table. You have 3 minutes to speak. You'll be given a 1-minute warning and your time starts when you're ready and when you press the button. Okay? Yes, please do. Please do. So you just need to press the button and then let go. It will turn red and then you'll be ready to start.
So 3 minutes from me saying my name and when you get started, yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sonia Robinson. I'm speaking as a resident at 135 and another friend of mine at 143. So I'll start now. Okay, thank you. So we're objecting to this development on the following basis. You are creating a concrete jungle. You already know the site has 4 blocks of flats with 200 dwellings, and we're objecting to the overdevelopment of this to over 400 dwellings consisting of 9 blocks of flats and a selection of townhouses. Those 2 large buildings, B2 and D2, will loom large as an eyesore for Smiths Lane's residents and the surrounding area, and quite frankly, they should go. You are planning to raise the ground level of this site substantially. Smiths Lane's houses and chalet bungalows will look out towards 3-storey townhouses. Why are these townhouses not in keeping with Smiths Lane? You are covering the area with acres of concrete. Our gardens on Smiths Lane are already saturated when it rains heavily. Where is this excess water you are creating going to go? You have ensured that your development is planned with flooding in mind to make sure you are all right at the greater risk of our houses on Smiths Lane being subjected to higher risks of flooding. We are aware there is undercover parking. Have you allowed enough? People will overspill onto Smiths Lane from this development. This will mean cars parked on both sides of the road on Smiths Lane, which there currently isn't. It will create a traffic hazard and bring traffic to a standstill because there is no allowance for 2-way traffic, which we currently have. Also remember that overdevelopment of the area brings extra cars trying to get onto the Maidenhead Road, creating unwanted traffic congestion and even more pollution. The current scale of your development is outrageous and not in keeping with the surrounding houses and bungalows. You have maxed out to ensure Abry Housing has maximum revenue, potential for council taxpayers, and not taking on board local residents' views at all. Why are there 2 large 7-8-storey buildings in B2 and D2 right in the middle of this development, whilst 4 other blocks, C1, 2, 3 and 4 are the lowest at 6 stories. These 4 are even facing onto the football pitches, bothering no one. So how come your planning puts these 4 blocks, who are affecting no one, at only 6 stories, the lowest? Is this really a well thought out development? Overdevelopment of this space, including the giving away of valuable green space, will put a strain on local resources, including schools, doctors. This will compromise the quality of life for residents. To sum it up, we realise that this development is going to happen. It's going to go ahead. However, it needs to be with a reduced footprint of at least 100, and also take into consideration not just the Sawyers Close residents, but also Smiths Lane's residents, in order to promote a balanced outcome for all stakeholders.
Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you very much. Okay, and now on behalf of the applicant, we have Stephen Lodge. Thank you. The same rules apply. You have 3 minutes from when you begin speaking, and the microphone's already on for you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Committee. Thank you for your time. I'm Stephen Lodge. I'm the Executive Director of Development and Asset Management for ABRI, the major provider of quality affordable homes in the borough. I speak in support of the application. I welcome that your officers recommend this proposal for approval. ABRI is extremely proud and excited about the multiple positive benefits the regeneration of Sawyers Close will have for the people that live there now, the people in the future, and the legacy this redevelopment will leave by way of the improvement it will have on the surrounding area and the economic opportunities it will bring. The existing 1960s blocks are no longer suitable to meet the needs of the residents of the borough. They deserve modern, energy efficient, fit for purpose new homes. ABRI is proposing that all 413 new homes are affordable. This includes more than 200 additional affordable homes to meet the acute need in the borough. The scheme has been fundamentally shaped through extensive engagement with residents, local stakeholders, the surrounding community, and significant pre-application engagement with officers at RBWM. The benefits you'll have seen, but I'll recap. 413 new affordable homes. A one-move strategy, meaning existing residents move only once from their existing home to their new home. A new community centre open to everyone. 11% on-site biodiversity net gain. A new on-site children's play area and equipment. Comprehensive landscaping, including significant new tree planting alongside retention of almost all existing trees. An on-site cycle hub, electric vehicle charging and on-site car club spaces. Solar panels and green roofs, and the use of modern methods of construction to substantially reduce carbon with a targeted overall carbon saving that exceeds current building regulations requirements by 73%. And, what I'm sure you'll agree, a well-designed, high-quality, sustainable place that people will be proud to call home and where they can be part of the flourishing community. The proposal accords with the principles in the Stakeholder Master Plan document that RBWM's Cabinet approved earlier this year. We thank officers and stakeholders for their extensive collaboration over the past 3 years and brings us to share this exceptional proposal tonight. There were no major objections from statutory consultees, including highways and flood risk officers. When ABRI asked its residents if they favoured redevelopment, the answer was a resounding yes. When ABRI asked local stakeholders if they support these proposals, 86% of respondents to the final plan stated they support or strongly support these proposals. We respectfully request that members approve the Sawyers Close application tonight, taking this opportunity to change the lives and futures for so many residents in Windsor and creating such an exemplar scheme and positive legacy for the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. And finally, we have Councillor Price. Thank you. And the same rules, you have 3 minutes from when you begin speaking, and you'll be given a 1-minute warning.
Good evening, I'm Helen Price, the Ward Councillor. I'm in favour of this application. The current 4 blocks are well past their sell-by date. ABRI are finding it a real challenge to keep up with repairs, and thus the living conditions for the residents are just not acceptable. Certainly not the standards that the Royal Borough or ABRI strive for. If passed tonight, the last of the current residents will move into new buildings in 2028. So that's another 5 years of deterioration. We can't wait any longer. The residents can't wait any longer. Is this scheme before you perfect? No. But what in life ever is, and this scheme is not far short. I do have concerns, one major and one minor, so the minor one first. Affordable housing. I would urge confirmation at this meeting that this is to be 100% affordable housing, and this will be secured through the land transfer agreement. Parking, and this is my major concern. It is the goal at national and local level to reduce car ownership and usage. There are only 0.8 car parking places per unit. Abbey are doing all they can to encourage residents to move away from car ownership by actively promoting cycling, a car share facility, and an educational programme. The Active Travel Standing England's standing advice note explains how to shift residents from car ownership to walking, wheeling, and cycling. So what happens when residents leave the site? There is no provision for improving the pavements for walkers, wheelchair users, buggy and pram owners. As you know, these homes are disabled friendly, so there is likely to be a higher number of disabled residents living here using mobility aids to get around. There's no provision for segregated cycle lanes. Would parents be happy for their children to cycle to school on our increasingly busy roads? There's no provision for locking up bikes safely at their destination, and we all know about the high level of bike thefts. There are now currently two bus services. However, there's a consultation proposing to remove one. So in the face of these challenges, what will residents do? Continue to own a car and park on nearby streets? That most certainly will not foster community cohesion. I assumed there would be SIL contributions to help pay for improvements for the local infrastructure, but there are no SIL payments on 100% affordable developments. I had anticipated that Section 106 funding would be allocated for this, but I can't see this in the papers. So, panel members, what influence can you bring to bear to ensure that the current S106 agreements will set aside funds to improve the local travel infrastructure? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Okay, right. We will open this up for debate with members. Who'd like to begin? Councillor Davis.
So back in March of 2023, the stakeholder master plan document was approved by Cabinet. This must be the current plan we're voting on must broadly align with that plan, and it does. So any objections towards size, location, and density has already really been agreed upon, because this current application broadly aligns with that stakeholder master plan document. I just wanted to get that out with first.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple of clarifications. First of all, I think actually Councillor Price already touched them on her presentation, but the first one is about the affordable housing. It mentions in the documentation about 30% of it being affordable, but obviously currently there's 192 dwellings that are all social housing. So I want a clarification on that. Do you want my second question now, or do you want? Yeah. And the second question is about parking. We've heard quite a lot about car parking this evening. I know 364 spaces have been allocated in this new site for 413 dwellings. That's 49 without any vehicles. And I know 39% are not supposed to have a car. But I know that a resident's checked quite recently about the number of cars that have been seen on site, and there's been 193, 199 and things like that overnight. Quite a lot of people work nights as well, so it does depend on the time of day, but it does seem like at least that's one car per dwelling right now. So to reduce it doesn't seem like the best option for me, because as we heard from that lady, Smith's Lane's going to be seriously impacted. All the other roads around there are going to be seriously impacted. And, whilst it looks a great development in all other aspects, I am concerned about the parking. And also I heard about a car club, and I assume that's going to take up some of those spaces as well. So that'll be even less spaces available for the dwellings. And whilst there's currently, it's all social housing at the moment, we're going to be introducing affordable housing and shared ownership. They're a sort of slightly different dynamic. They might have more cars. They also are going to be, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom houses. They might have more than one car as well. And, if we're already talking about, oh, we might not have enough parking spaces before it's even built, you know, I think that's quite a problem. And as we know, the bus routes around there at the moment are terrible, and it's in consultation at the moment. So, you know, I don't think that's an option either at the moment. So, but the rest of it does all sound great, but they're my points for clarification. Thanks.
Thank you. What I'll do is just take a few more and then we'll go to officers to answer in the round, if that's okay. Councillor Buckley.
Yes, a couple of points. Parking was one of mine, so I won't touch on it again because obviously I think we're all deeply concerned about that, as the residents would be. In regards to the 106 and the officers clarified what the 106 payments be going for, my concern is, you know, with the lack of infrastructure, schools, doctors' surgeries, and public transport routes, which obviously will be relied upon if we're going to be getting rid of cars. My concern is over the 106 and SIL money. I understand there'll be no SIL payments if this is affordable housing, but I really have deep concerns, and as Councillor Price has pointed out, in regards to the 106 money, I'd like to clarify what can be done in regards to that. And secondly, the point on that the lady brought up as a resident in regards to the flipping of the development. I know it seems a crazy situation, but in regards to the way it's been projected in regards to B2 and D2 being on resident side and all the other lower end buildings on the park side, I'd just like the clarification in regards to that and where we can look to try and help or support the concerns of residents in regards to that.
Yes, Mark.
I've got a point which probably builds on the points already raised around sort of travel, and just thinking about cycling. It's obviously excellent that there's a cycle hub on site, and focusing in on the segregated cycle lane. So I noticed that in the plans, bicycles are featured on pavements, and if I refer to all the various planning documents, cycles are a vehicle, and as we know, vehicles and pedestrians don't mix. So very disappointed in the plans that there are no basically segregated routes. So I would, I don't know if it's possible, but I would certainly urge, you know, the review of the sort of the travel ways, the roads and the pavements to see whether actual segregation can happen. And also just in terms of the wider geography, this site is particularly well sited for people to access the town centre. And I kind of had a little look at the different ways you can access the town centre. If somebody walked from here to the town centre, it's just under a mile, and that could take sort of like 25-30 minutes or so. If somebody used a car, it would be slightly quicker. Sorry, it would be considerably quicker, obviously 7 minutes, but then they would have to park with a cost and all the rest of it. The bus routes, as alluded to, are all over the place. There isn't a direct bus route, and that would basically take about half an hour. And cycling would be about 10 minutes if there was a direct route, and you can clearly park on around Ascot Street. So for me, this falls way short of the requirements in all the other planning documents in terms of actually promoting the positive choice of cycling by providing suitable infrastructure, like a clear cycle path where somebody can, if they're sitting in a traffic jam one day, they can look at the cycle path and go, you know what, I might use that cycle path tomorrow because it'll be quicker and cheaper. You know, we're in a cost of living crisis. This is all affordable housing. Actually facilitating people cycling into the town centre to use the trains or to use buses or other things, we need to be doing, and this development does not do that for me. You know, it's an afterthought around in terms of actually moving. If there's an opportunity to secure 106 and Section 106 funding to improve that or to develop it, I think that would be excellent.
Councillor Teasing.
I won't repeat other points that people have made, but since we seem to have focused on parking and travel, I'll just a couple of extra points on that. Just a clarity in terms of parking. My understanding, looking at the travel plan, is that actually something like only 44% of residents of the borough actually drive a car or van to work. And actually, my understanding is also that we have actually done, we have 192 people who currently live in the existing blocks, and we've actually surveyed them as well, and I just want that clarified. So I think I'm actually more comfortable in terms of this 0.8 numbers, that's not overly aggressive or difficult. So that just want clarification on that. On the active travel, I agree very much with the points that Councillor Price and Councillor Wilson have made. I wonder actually, though, in terms of the answer to that, I presume that it's less about this development, more about the routes from this development and into the town. And I just wonder if that is an issue related to maybe getting what Section 106 agreement. Just wonder if that could be clarified.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. I think the points that people have made about travel and parking are all very valid, but I think we need to be very realistic about this. We are here to review the plan that we have in front of us, not the plan that we would like to see. So our option is really, and we need to be very honest about this, to either approve the plan that we have in front of us or reject it, because we feel that parking and other matters like cycling, as Councillor Wilson mentioned, are more important than that. And I think the problem is that because this is, in the officer's opinion, a compliant application, even if we turn it down here, there is, I think, 100% guarantee that ABRI would appeal and the inspectors would approve it. So we don't have the power here to put footpaths in or to get extra parking into this application. It is what it is. I totally agree that the parking may not be exactly what we want, but it is compliant with the borough's policy. And the fact that there is no cycle lanes directly into Windsor is actually really unfortunate, because in this day and age, you would have thought we should have had those sort of things, because we should be encouraging active travel. And it's one way, one small way that a certain section of the community can use to travel quickly and easily between different places. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it is something that people can do. The other thing, I think, you know, we can say what we like about where the buildings have been put and whether they're facing the right way or the wrong way, or they're a bit too high. But again, that is, the application is what it is, and ABRI and the planning team will have spent many months, if not years, looking through this application to arrive at the final configuration that there is. I can see that there are obviously potential ways where this could have ended up as a different design and things could have ended up in different places, but we don't have the ability here right now to change all of that unless we reject it, and there is some way forward of amending the application with ABRI to come back with another application. And that is going to obviously extend the time which existing residents who are, we've heard, in poor housing situation will have to wait for that process to go through. You know, you could be talking about, on a major application like this, easily 18 months before something else comes back, if it was able to be worked through. So I really think that right here, right now, the choice is, do we accept it or not? We can't change it or amend it, much as we might like to do some of those things. We just don't have the power to do that. So I think we just need to be brutally realistic in terms of what this panel can actually do. The hard work has been done by the planning team, who've obviously worked very carefully with ABRI over a number of years to get to where we are now. And I think we're in a situation where, much as I have huge sympathy for the residents, I think we just have to, this is a compliant application. We just have to accept it and approve it in line with officer's recommendation, to be honest. We could talk all night about whether something is too high, too low, whether we need more or less of things. But actually, we all know that on this panel, we don't have the capacity, the facility to change these things right now. So I think it's Hobson's choice. And I think we should actually, I would move that we approve officer's recommendation on this.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, just to continue on from what Councillor Sharp was saying, I emailed the planning team with my question about parking beforehand and whether it's compliant. I'll just read out what a quote to me as they said it. It might be worth highlighting that the adopted parking standards contained within Parking Strategy 2004 does not set out any minimum requirements, only maximum parking standard. The Council has adopted sustainability policies which seek to promote alternative forms of travel as opposed to private car use. National and local planning policy puts emphasis on sustainable forms of transport. So the key part of that is there's only a minimum. There's no minimum requirement. It is legally compliant, and if we do refuse this on basis of parking, it will be defeated at appeal. My own personal view on the parking, it might not be enough, but I applaud Abby's ambitious plan to get people cycling. I want more cycling car clubs and cycle hubs in central Windsor where parking's awful, and I will be watching this development with great interest to see if it can copy any of our ideas.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to second his.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to officers now to get some of those questions answered and hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by clarifying the affordable housing. So the application in front of us is for 30% affordable housing. ABRI is a registered provider. The remainder of the affordable housing will come through other means outside the remits of this application. There's a land transfer agreement between the council and ABRI that gives the council control over the affordable housing coming forward. But what's in front of us today is a 30% affordable housing scheme, and that's what we got to assess. In terms of the parking, fully appreciate there's a lot of discussion surrounding that point. And as Councillor Davies, he basically quoted me, so I'm not going to repeat that. But basically, there's a balance involved here, and that is that if more parking was to be put on site, you're going to have to lose something to support it. So that might be losing soft landscaping, that might be losing some affordable units, that might be losing the cycle hub, that might be losing cycle stores. There's a balance to be made, and the policy that is in front of us says that there is a maximum standard, but there's no minimum. And with the sustainability policies set out within the borough local plan, those are looking for alternative means of transport. Those are seeking for reduced car usage, private car usage. They're looking to use sustainable means of transport, cycling, shared car ownership. So you've got the car club on site. I did pick up the number of spaces wasn't understood. It's 3 spaces for the car club. I think that's set out in the report on one of the paragraphs. So hopefully that sort of gives you an idea as to why the parking is as it is. It's because it is policy compliant, and the scheme is seeking to look for alternative modes of transport rather than the private car use, and seeking to build upon our sustainability policies, which we are really promoting. I might as well read out some additional census data, because I did note that that was one of the points that wanted to be clarified as well. But for instance, this is specific to the Clewer and Dedworth East Ward, but 42% of residents which are over the age of 16 mainly use a car to travel to their workplace. 37.5% of residents mainly work from home. Only 62.7% of the residents are economically active. 20.4% of the residents are between 0 and 14 years old, so they're not going to be driving. 13.2% of residents are over the age of 64. I might be mistaken, I haven't hit that age yet, but I think the license gets revoked at 65 and you have to reapply for it. So I would be, I would have thought that 13.2% aren't going to be driving. It would be lower than that. There are statistics to back this up, and that is through census data and through ABRI's consultation with the community as well, and the survey that they have conducted. With regard to the flipping of the development in terms of the lower heights being closer to the park and the higher heights of B2 and D2 being closer to the residents, I'll just flick to the site photos again. But basically this is set so that it's stepping up from ground level, and it's stepping into the development. So if I flick through from this, so we're basically it's stepping from no development up and going towards the development in the area, and that's the reason for it being that way. It's flipped, but there is good reason for it. In terms of the bus service being removed, that hasn't happened yet, and we've got to assess the application as it is in front of us today.
No, I mean, I was just going to, on the parking front, clarify a couple of things. So I think that the fact that we have the census data is a bit unique in that this site is actually such a large site, is almost a whole output area for the census data. So we do have the census data, which is effectively the car ownership for this site in this case, and we have the survey, which is really useful indication of what car ownership is within the existing site information. We don't normally have, and does support that the car ownership levels for this particular site are quite low at the moment, and presumably the residents are therefore managing to live quite comfortably without car ownership, or with those levels of car ownership. And that's before the additional measures that are being put in place through this scheme, such as the cycle hub, the 3 car club spaces, and evidence does show, for example, that once someone signs up to a car club, about a third of people do get rid of their car if they sign up to a car club, because they find they don't need it. So I think that is all useful information we have on this scheme, which we don't normally have. As Councillor Sharp says, we do have to consider the scheme before us and the plans before us. People may wonder, well, is there scope to just secure some small changes through conditions, etc.? But the issue is any changes to car parking levels have knock-on impact. So, you know, additional car parking spaces do actually take up quite a lot of space. The only space available on the site that isn't car parking or buildings at the moment is the space that's providing the benefits in terms of residential amenity space, green infrastructure, and sustainable drainage, flood alleviation measures, etc., which are all also important things in the planning balance. I think I would also just touch on the points about the wider cycle infrastructure. So the idea generally is that wider strategic cycle routes, etc., would generally be funded through community infrastructure levy. That's what it's there for. Now, affordable housing schemes nationally under the legislation are exempted from making provision towards community infrastructure levy. Whether we locally agree with that, they obviously do have impacts on infrastructure, but that is what the national legislation says. In terms of trying to do those things through Section 106 rather than community infrastructure levy, we can only deal with things through Section 106 if they meet the relevant tests. And that includes, for example, them being reasonably related to the scale of the development. So obviously a cycle route going all the way into Windsor, which serves a much larger group, it serves all the existing residents and all potential developments. Trying to ask for that through Section 106 wouldn't be reasonably related to the development that we're considering. So I think there's a lot that they're doing positive on site to encourage cycle parking. I think anything off site that we would have to consider what the council may wish to do or what the council could do to deal with that. But I don't think under the test we could reasonably ask the applicant to provide that infrastructure in this case.
You said, I'll come just in a second. You said about obviously having to be related to on site, and they're providing 654 cycle spaces. Would the test apply? Would it be reasonable to say that there was a safe cycle route off the site that then joined up with existing cycling network? So, for example, there is a shared, it's not segregated, but there is a shared cycle route on the A308. So obviously it wouldn't be reasonable to say put a segregated one on the whole of the A308, but would it be reasonable to ensure that anything joins up with what's already there? Excuse me. Potentially.
I mean, without knowing precisely where that route is or how far away it is, or without knowing the cost implications, I don't think I'd be able to answer. What I do know is that the applicant has liaised with the sustainable travel team and the officers in that, and they have incorporated the things within the site that team have asked for.
Julie, sharp.
Thank you. With these developments, the thing that I always think about most is the impact on residents in the local area. And obviously cycling, parking are really important in all of that. The other point that was raised by the residents is the potential for flooding down Smith's Lane. And if that is the case, Section 106 contributions could potentially be used to alleviate any potential flooding and put in flood prevention measures in that area, which would be a direct consequence of some of the work that's being done in this area to develop the area. So I would have thought that would be a useful way that we could use the Section 106 contributions that we get from the developer from this scheme. The other thing I was thinking about as well, and this is in connection with residents during the building of the site, is that we put in place something that says that as one of the conditions that all the traffic needs to be kept on site all the time, because this is a large enough site to actually absorb all of the vehicles that the developers are going to be using, whether it's trucks, lorries, whatever it is, to ensure that Smith's Lane and the surrounding roads aren't inconvenienced with parking down those sort of roads during all the construction work, which is going to be happening over the 2 years following on from this. So I think we need to put something in the conditions which ensures that the developers will actually keep their vehicles to the maximum extent possible off the local roads whilst they're on site and working on site. Thank you.
Julian Teasy.
Hello, just 2 points. One is specifically in relation to the in terms of cycle and cycle routes. In fact, you can see it on that map there. On the other side of Maidenhead Road, it's not a segregated cycle lane, but it is a very wide. It is a cycle and pedestrian, and it is listed in the travel travel plan. It is actually listed and shown. So literally to get there, all you would need would be a way, even if it's a dropped curb, just in a way to get to that, which is just literally on the other side of the road. I just wonder if that can be done. Yes, just on that, I think that the only other point I was going to be made, it was just something that Councillor Price mentioned earlier. Even if it's passed, apparently the last people will be in. It will still take a long time. I think there's a moral side to this. We have a massive need for this, for housing, for social housing, and this is an opportunity here. And bluntly, I mean, I'm lucky enough to live in a lovely house. I've been round the Sawyers Close many times, and it is really looking tired and old. We've sort of, I think we've got to get on with it. I think if we were to vote this down today, I just think it would be a really unfair to the many people who really need just existing residents and also other residents who potential future residents as well.
Councillor Buckley, and then we'll have those points answered. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just obviously going back on Councillor Sharp and Councillor Davies' options and being obviously proposed and seconded. We do have some powers here, and deferral is one. I know that people might not want to hear it, but if there are real concerns of members, the situation is that maybe some of the considerations of the public could be taken down in a deferral. The reason why I say that 18 months, and Councillor Sharp might be right, it might be 12 months, might be 24 months. This is a generational change, and I appreciate it is needed, and I totally support, as Councillor Tizzy said, in regards to what's needed. However, it has to be the right thing. It has to be the right thing for everybody. And if we have concerns, I just want to remind members, they do have a power that they can defer this, refer it back to officers to clarify some of the points. It doesn't have to be accept or refuse. That was my main point. There are other options, other powers, this pattern. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking at Councillor Davis. He looks like he's saying no to deferral.
I don't think we need to defer it.
Yeah, I think there would have to be some really strong reason that something was outstanding or we were missing a key report to really legitimately say that we should defer. I feel we've had the questions that the panel have asked answered, by just coming back on the last couple of points.
So I think if I come back, so I've got some clarification from James while we were talking. So the thing that the Sustainable Transport team asked for to be secured in terms of linking things up was, if you look at that plan, you'll see there's a path going through the park which goes down and actually joins to an existing crossing point further down. So what the Sustainable Transport team had asked to ensure that there was a link was effectively that the development link up to that path, so cyclists can go through the park down to the crossing point that already exists and then go across the road to where the pavement is wider on the other side. So that was the way that we have sought to try and address that issue and make sure that there is a nice route for cyclists to try and get somewhere better. So that was the answer on that question. I just thought it was useful for me to come in and clarify some of the talk about flooding and drainage issues as well, because we do have a comprehensive redevelopment of the site here with comprehensive flooding reports and sustainable drainage strategies. So we have green roofs, we have SUDS provision in the site, and the reality is that with the flood reports and the work that's being done, this will make the flooding situation better probably than the development that's there. I haven't read all the technical documents personally, but generally you will find the existing buildings will have flat concrete roofs and be discharging to the drains. The existing hard standing is all hard standing, as you'll have seen from the photos. The roofs on this building are green. They will absorb water and then discharge it at a lower rate. We have SUDS provisions, so realistically it's a development that will improve the flooding situation, if anything.
Thank you. Yeah. No, fine. No, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise a new point, which I know a resident did actually register to speak at the meeting, but they were kind of trumped by the applicant. So if I can just ask a couple of questions that they raised. One is around the potential presence of asbestos, and I notice in the planning document in the report, right at the back, page 63, informatives, the applicant is recommended to ensure that contractors involved in the demolition are aware of the requirements of asbestos. I kind of hope that would be a little bit stronger than recommended. But I don't know if that's just wording or nuance, but I'm sure that the necessary work could we be reassured that the necessary precautions will be taken for asbestos, was the first point. And the second is a slightly wider point about the whole transition, in that for somebody who is a resident, that the transition will be managed well in terms of the build, and that anybody who has particular facilities such as handrails for disabilities, that sort of thing, they will be moved. They will have an equivalent residence to move into. So maybe just a reference to that kind of whole transition management, that it will be done, like a resident-led transition.
Thank you. I sense that some of those things are perhaps things that ABRI will take on board, having seen this letter, and if members are minded to approve, obviously then that will be something for them to take up. I don't know if you wanted to come back on any of those things.
I mean, I was just going to say the requirements on dealing with asbestos appropriately are matters dealt with separately under legislation, health and safety executive. So the developer would have to deal with any asbestos appropriately, regardless of what we as a planning panel say, and we don't need to duplicate that legislation. Similarly, the requirements to meet the needs of their existing residents are the requirements that APRI will have to fulfil in their planning for the transition in any event as a registered social provider relocating residents. So they're not things that we as a planning panel need to concern ourselves with tonight. They are things that the registered social landlord will have to deal with in line with the requirements placed on them separately.
Okay, members, so we do have a recommendation on the table, which is to approve, subject to all the conditions. In fact, I'll ask Mikey to read it out because he's much better than me.
I was just going to clarify Councillor Sharp's thing about the traffic on site, or just go with the original motion that was put on the table. Let's go with the original motion on the table, correct? Yeah, so the motion on the table that was proposed by Councillor Sharp, seconded by Councillor Davis, is obviously to agree with, to grant planning permission in line with officer recommendation on the satisfactory completion of the section 106 agreement, to outline the conditions in the report, and a section 278 legal agreement for 4 on-street parking spaces, and with the conditions listed in section 14 of the report. So with that in mind, we'll go to a named vote, or you can go for, against, or abstain. So this is for to grant planning permission. Councillor Buckley.
For.
Councillor Carpenter.
For.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor Amy Teasey.
For.
Councillor Julian Teasey.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
So that is 7 votes against to none, so it passes unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. And so it's quite an exciting project, and we'll wait and see, and hopefully it will offer some new opportunities for our residents. So thank you, members. If anybody does want to leave after that, I'll just give you a moment to take your leave.
This one's on Lane's Hill. Quite a bit in there.
And thank you to remaining residents for your patience. Obviously, that was quite a large application, so took a little bit of discussion. But if we're ready, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Broom Lodge and land at Broom Lodge, Stanwell Road, Horton.
Nick, I believe you are able to begin the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. You're able to share your screen as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll just get the pointer up. Sorry, I'm just having a moment with the presentation. Is everybody able to see the screen with the pointer?
Yes, yes, we can.
Right, sorry everybody, I apologise for that delay. This application is for the subdivision of the existing residential dwelling into 5 flats, including the partial demolition and extension of the host dwelling. The application also includes the erection of 10 detached and semi-detached dwellings together with revised access, driveways and landscaping. The application site is on the edge of the village of Horton. The village boundary is demonstrated by the yellow line. The host site is within the red line area. The hatched blue area is the location of flood zone 2. The green belt effectively washes over the entire village, and the host site is entirely within the green belt. There are heritage assets to the south of the site, including a Grade 1 listed building, St Michael's Church that is visible here, and also Lynch Gate, which is the gate to St Michael's Church. I think on this slide, I'll just draw your attention to the building line. If we look to the west, there is a recreational ground with a playing area. There is a village hall and then additional dwellings. So these dwellings are set back in a similar fashion to the hall. So as we go forward into the slides, there is 1 2-story dwelling on the host site, and the rest of the buildings are single story with flat or shallow roofs. Within the host site, there is some commercial undertakings taking place to the northern and western boundaries. The residential area is outlined in green, and this effectively encompasses where there is no evident commercial undertakings taking place. This is a aerial view with a three-dimensional element to it. The idea here is to show the single-story aspects to the side and rear of the outbuildings and associated paraphernalia. So the host building itself is 2 stories with a dual pitch roof with a valley gutter, and the rest of the buildings on site are low-rise single-story dwellings. The site to the east is also under the same ownership, hence that's why this is in blue. And there is a considerable setback to a dwelling at the front and then associated storage buildings to the rear. Some slides of the host site. This is the front of the building, front of the main residential dwelling. The commercial space to the side and rear is indicated in context by this photograph. You can see the trees to the back of the site, that's looking north. That's indicative of the nature of the commercial undertakings taking place. There are shipping containers, piles of building rubble, caravans, etc. on site. To the rear of the host dwelling, there is a residential garden and associated residential outbuildings. So it's a different character to the commercial aspect. Within the site itself, the commercial element has its own separate entrance. That's demonstrated in this slide in the top left. Views of the host site from the west in particular are shown here. That you can see the western boundary and the existing residential dwelling in situ, dual pitched. It's not particularly apparent that there's any other buildings within this development because they're single story and they're behind the hedge and the other trees in the area. Bottom left slide indicates the main entrance used for the residential dwelling adjacent to the existing park to the west. And again, this photo in the corner is just showing again that you can't see any of the or you can't readily see any of the outbuildings taking place to the rear of this site. The proposed site plans before you here, I alluded to the building line earlier. This is the hall to the west of the site. So the first plots are quite prominent in the forward position. The residential building is not altering dramatically in its original footprint. The rest of the the rest of the buildings are located in an orderly T-junction fashion. During the confusion of getting the slides earlier, there was an update that was distributed to everybody prior to the lead up to this application. So I'm assuming that members have read that. It was just a simple one-line removal from the committee report in full. But further to that, there has been a single comment received from the Highway Authority today, and they essentially said they agreed there was no reason to object to the application internally, but they did allude to the fact that the width of the access demonstrated here was slightly below the standard required for a refuge truck. Now, officers have been in consultation with senior management, and we're of the view that there's no reason to object to that in itself, because it could be conditioned in the event of approval. So effectively, the only difference on this slide is the location of the plot numbers, giving an indication of garden sizes, and also alluding to where the balconies are on the converted host dwelling. Looking at the existing cross-section, as the images previously showed, one can't readily see any of the outbuildings to the rear of the plot from wider vantage points. What is being proposed, although not exactly taken from, if you like, the viewpoint of the park or the viewpoint north of the site, they do demonstrate a considerable increase in size and bulk of building undertakings taking place. And these buildings here are the plots to the rear of the site, and also along the western boundary. This is the existing host dwelling, and the proposed alterations. There's a 2-storey front gable projection being included, balconies to the rear. There's been no objection to the alterations to the host building within the committee report. These are the 2 plots immediately adjacent to Stanwell Road, and fairly uniform in style. There has been an objection raised to the plot's appearance to the rear due to the mansard roof that is shown within these 2 semi-detached dwellings. And that was also raised as an objection by the Conservation Department. This is plot 10, single detached dwelling, and there are obviously 10 reasons for refusal detailed in the committee report. This particular table is also in the committee report itself. It's just simply indicating the weight given to the reasons for refusal that I'm sure members have already read. And yes, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Right, we have one public speaker this evening for this, and that's Bridget Taylor on behalf of the applicant. So as before, you have 3 minutes, and you'll have a 1-minute warning, and your time starts when you start speaking.
Lovely, thank you. So I know there's a lot of information in this report before you. There's a lot of reasons for refusal. There's been a lot of information from me also. So I appreciate you taking the time to consider this carefully. Firstly, if I could just address the comment just now about the extent of previously developed land or the extent of commercial land. It's clear from that aerial image showing the extent of car parking over the front of the site that that's not associated with the dwelling. There's large commercial vehicles parked all over the front of that site. So this goes to the first of my points, essentially, that we have a difference of opinion with the officer as to whether or not this site is previously developed land. Our position is that it clearly is, and that is very relevant to the Greenbelt argument. So the officer has taken the view that the site is not, well, the commercial elements of the site are not previously developed land, but then has also taken the view that it is commercial and therefore it fails on the loss of commercial floor space, which is having your cake and eating it effectively. The commercial floor space on the site is a caravan and shipping containers. There's no permanent building on the commercial part of the site that delivers employment floor space or industrial floor space. There are large stockpiles, there's large amounts of debris, large amounts of dilapidated bits and pieces all over. So in essence, what you have before you is a proposal for 15 homes, a net gain of 14, on previously developed land, inside a settlement boundary, and predominantly on land which is in flood zone 1, so at the lowest risk of flooding. And as we all know, sites of that nature do not come along every day. This proposal will clean up a site which is presently detracting from the character of the village, and furthermore it will deliver 33% affordable housing, which exceeds policy requirements. So I've addressed just now the commercial floor space issue. The Greenbelt, there's not enough time in 3 minutes to go into it, but suffice to say, there is an ability to grant this proposal under the Greenbelt policy. It's not inappropriate development. It is limited in filling in a village. Even if that were not accepted, it's redevelopment of previously developed land, which delivers affordable housing, and therefore the test is whether the proposal is substantially greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt compared to what is there now. So that substantial is what you need to have in your mind. There's a lot of talk about trees and whether this will result in loss of predominantly category C trees, which are outside the red line boundary. It's mere supposition. The reason for refusal on affordable housing grounds is purely on the basis of the tenure. They have sought 100% social rent, as opposed to the policy requirement, which is a mix of affordable housing types. And on flood risk and drainage, there's been a detailed report produced. The only outstanding issue there is whether infiltration testing has been carried out to show that it can work in feasibility terms. There's no objection to carrying out that work. It's simply a case, and this is also the case with the biodiversity net gain. We have a clear
Thank you.
opinion.
Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay,
Sorry,
fine.
thank you.
Understood.
Thank you. So we don't have any, excuse me, any other public speakers. So I'll open it up to members for discussion, please. Councillor Teasey.
Yes, I'm sorry to say that I don't support what I've just heard, the opinions of what I've just heard. There seem to be multiple very strong reasons for rejecting this, that the officers are very clearly laid out. Principal among those, I'd say, is in terms of the loss of green belt, and my understanding is it doesn't become previously developed land because it's got a caravan or a shipping container on it. The layout, especially where incongruous based on what is there already, I mean, we could, well, I won't repeat what's been on there, but this to me seems almost, I'm sorry to say, almost a slam dunk refusal. I just don't see that there is any. I was willing to listen, but I just don't see it, I'm afraid. I would be happy almost to sort of propose that we go with officer recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley and then Councillor Davies.
I think we have to be concerned with the number of statutory consultees that have objected to this. So we've got the local flood authority, highways, ecology, tree officers, conservation officers, and the local parish council as all statutory consultees that have objected to this application. And even though this application would warrant a refusal, which I don't disagree with Councillor Tizzy, and officers are confident that this would be upheld by the Secretary of State, I'm inclined to put a recommendation in to defer to allow the applicant to mitigate against the statutory consultees and officers' reports. I don't like this sort of one issue or another, refusal or not, when there is a situation where there can be mitigation. If there can't be, then fine, and obviously the applicant argues that there is. And I would put a recommendation rather than just for refusal, is that we look to defer this and allow the consultee to be involved with the statutory consultees and the applicant with officers to try and mitigate these. If it can't be done, then I don't have any issue with it coming back and obviously going through that process of refusal, but that would be my recommendation.
Just looking for the reasons for refusal, but no legal agreement has been secured to ensure the carbon offset contribution. I seem to remember from a previous application that that cannot be added as a condition that's secured. It has to be agreed beforehand, right? Just wanted confirmation on that.
Any other comments? Just collect up a few before we go to officers. No? Okay.
I just think it would be useful to come in on the suggestion of deferral to highlight that as the local planning authority, we have a duty to deal with the applications before us and to try and make determinations as expediently as possible. And we do have to determine the applications before us, and we can't just defer every time that we think there's further work to be done on something, because we do have to process things through the system. I would say on this, the issues are quite substantive. They're not going to be overcome without substantial changes to the scheme, and they're not just technical issues and ticking a box. We've got some fundamental and principal issues there, and there are some fundamental issues just to do with the design layout of the site and the amount of units that are trying to be squeezed in there. So my advice would quite strongly be that I don't think deferral would be an appropriate option. I think that the committee should make a decision tonight, set out their concerns, and the applicant then has options open to them. The options being either to try and address those concerns at a local level through looking at the concerns, preparing a resubmission. As of yesterday, there's no longer a free resubmission. There is a fee for it as of yesterday because national fee changes, but there would be quite a bit of work that they'd have to do behind the scenes to get there, or they have the option of appealing. And if the case is as the applicant set out, they just have a fundamentally difference of opinion in terms of some of the interpretations of national planning policy, then appealing would be the way to try and get to the bottom of those fundamental differences of opinion. And if we don't make a determination, they don't have that option open to them. So that would be my strong advice on that front.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me that with the fundamental difference in opinion as to whether this is previously developed land or whether this is actually greenbelt, and it's always difficult when greenbelt doesn't appear green and pleasant and it looks like it's a bit of an old industrial land or something, that we have a difference of opinion. And I think given the test that greenbelt always has for it, that's a very high bar for developers to get over in terms of whether they can develop in those areas or not. Now, given that, I think that we don't really have an option here this evening. As we said with the previous application, we can't choose whether we add a little bit of this or add, we have the application we have in front of us to look at, and the application that we have in front of us, I think, doesn't pass the test. I think were the applicant to come back with something different, there may be possibility for them to pass the test, but I still think that the greenbelt test is a very high bar for them to climb over, to be honest. And I think to come back with anything like a scaled back version of this would also fail the tests for primarily the same reasons. There may be fewer of them, but I think it would still fail the test. So I'm more than happy to second the proposal from Councillor Teasey. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I think just like to sort of reflect, I guess, on some of the things in my mind. Firstly, I think clearly the site does seem broadly to be welcoming some form of development. So I agree with the with the applicant on that front, and clearly the weighting there of essentially sort of providing more dwellings and improving the housing supply is a good thing. It also seems to me that a number of the points on the left can be dealt with through process with another application. So there's a number of the ones which can be overcome. My opinion on the greenbelt piece is that I'm kind of wondering that if a number of the other things get resolved, whether that weighting is then a bit more in the balance than Councillor Sharp is suggesting. I guess my sense would be if the density was reduced, that could resolve like the tree problem, the proximity to the road, potentially the green belt, and obviously the biodiversity net gain needs to be addressed. So there's a lot to address, but I guess it's very difficult to look further at this application. But it would be good to in due course have something positive on the site. Just a comment, really.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise there were 2 points that the applicant made about excuse me, whether this was considered to be limited infilling, and that's a term we've heard before. And I know that that's quite hard to define because it's not defined in policy particularly clearly. But I think in the past our understanding has been where you have, rows of development and you're literally just filling in a gap rather than building out a space. I wonder if you could just clarify that. Excuse me. And then the other question that we were being asked to consider was whether this did have a substantial impact on the openness of the green belt. And I just wondered if you could give a little bit more on your view on that, please.
Nick, do you want to, or shall I?
He's muted. Nick, you're currently muted.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, Joe, or unless you want to.
Yes, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, on those two specific questions, yes, I mean, ultimately, in terms of the Greenbelt policy, the local plan aligns with the NPPF, of course, and the NPPF makes clear, the National Planning Policy Framework makes clear that the local planning authority, in paragraph 149, a local planning authority should regard the construction of new buildings as inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, full stop. Exceptions to this are, and then we have the two exceptions that have been discussed in the report. Firstly, the limited infilling element. The National Planning Policy Framework is quite, well, it's very limited in terms of the guidance it gives what is limited infilling. However, the local plan is more generous and actually has a paragraph which I've included at 8.7 in the report. So for the purposes of this policy, limited infilling is considered to be the development of a small gap in an otherwise continuous frontage, or the small-scale redevelopment of existing properties within such a frontage. It is also includes infilling of small gaps within built development, and it should be appropriate to the scale of the locality and not have an adverse impact on the character of the locality. So we do have that guidance within the borough local plan, and ultimately I've reached the conclusion that what's proposed cannot be described as limited infilling due to the scale, volume and height indeed of what is proposed. I mean, for instance, there are no bungalows here. Everything is, we're saying 2 stories, but 2 stories also includes a pitched roof. The dwellings to the rear of the site, for example, have ridge heights taller than the host building. So there doesn't appear to be any offering towards a smaller ridge height via, for example, a bungalow or anything of that nature. So in that regard, I wouldn't describe the proposal as limited infilling. And in terms of whether the site fulfills previously developed land, again, there's 2 criteria here in terms of paragraph G, limited infilling of the partial or complete redevelopment of previously developed land, whether redundant or in continued use. Here, the guidance states no, which would not have a greater impact on the openness of the greenbelt than the existing development. Well, clearly this would, so it doesn't fulfill that criteria. And then the second aspect of paragraph G of 149 says would not cause substantial harm to the openness of the greenbelt, where the development would reuse previously developed land and contribute towards meeting an affordable housing need. Well, again, not the entirety of the site is classified as previously developed land. The host building is, that's been alluded to earlier in conversation, but it hasn't been demonstrated that the surrounding undertakings to the north and west fit within the criteria of being previously developed land for the reasons identified in the report. Sorry, go on.
No, please carry on if you need to.
Well, all I was going to say was to make an assessment on whether the undertakings to the west and north of the site are part of the commercial undertaking, we would require a lawful development certificate to formally change the use of that land. At the moment, that hasn't been provided. The enforcement undertakings that are detailed in the report simply closed the case on enforcement questions as to whether a commercial undertaking was happening, and none of them stated that they were in breach of planning, and therefore no lawful development certificate was submitted historically in these areas.
Thank you, Nick, for that explanation. Are there any more comments or questions from members? No. So can we just recap what we have in front of us?
So we do have a motion on the table proposed by Councillor Julian Teasey, seconded by Councillor Sharp, and it is to go in line with officer recommendation to refuse planning for reasons given in section 12 of the report. So if that's good, we'll take a name vote. So this is for, obviously, again, in officer recommendation to refuse planning for reasons given in section 12 of the report. Yeah, you'll be asked whether you're for refusal, against refusal, or abstaining. So with that, Councillor Buckley.
For.
Councillor Carpenter.
For.
Councillor Davies.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor Amy Teasey.
For.
Councillor Julian Teasey.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
So it's unanimous, Chair. The motion carries.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 59 to 59A St Leonards Road, Windsor. And who's introducing this one? That's Jo. Thank you,
Chair. Just going to find the laser pointer that Nick used. That was quite helpful. So this agenda item is for it's a site 59 to 59A St Leonards Road, Windsor. It's a full application, and it's for part single story, part 2-story, side and rear extensions, roof extension, dormer window, 2 roof terraces, alterations to fenestration, a new refuge and cycle store, and this is to provide an additional ground floor commercial unit and the change of use of the first and second floors from retail offices to provide 4 new residential dwellings. So these 2 slides show the location plan. So here's the site outlined in red, and that's other land within the applicant's ownership outlined in blue. St Leonards Road runs along the west of the site, so the existing buildings fronting onto St Leonards Road. To the rear, they're accessed by Trinity Place. This is the block plan showing the site in a bit more detail. So there's an access road that runs to the north of the site, and there are residential properties in Temple Gate to the north, and to the south we have number 61 St Leonards Road and Chesterton Place. The site is within the inner Windsor conservation area and Windsor town centre. So just starting off with some photos to get a bit of a context. This photo on the left here shows the front elevation of the building, and the side elevation here, and this access road to the side, so that's to the north of the site, off St Leonards Road going into Trinity Yard to the rear. This photo on the right hand side is a view of number 61 St Leonards Road and Chesterton Place, so that's taken from the street scene. These photos here show the area at the rear of the site to be retained as a turning area for cars and vehicles using Trinity Yard. And so here, beyond the application site boundary, you can see Chesterton Place. That's the tall flank wall of number 61, so that's immediately to the south of the application site. This is the rear of the application building itself. Again, here on the right, you can see it a bit more clearly. So from the frontage there on St Leonards Road, all the way back to the rear. That's your existing north side elevation. So this is a good photo showing the rear courtyard area, which is to be infilled by the proposed single story and first floor extension. So you can see just on the left hand side here, the wall of number 61 St Leonards Road, quite tall 3-story flank wall there. And again on this, so that elevation there, that's sort of the inner elevation of the existing building. And then on the right, again, you can see number 61, and that's the rear of the existing building. So this is taken from in Trinity Yard, looking back towards St Leonards Road. This is Temple Gate. So that's the development on the opposite side of the access. So there's 2 blank walls facing the application building. You can note some windows here on this eastern elevation. And again, this slide here, looking back from the yard towards St Leonards Road, and that's your application building, rear elevation, the application building, and the side elevations of Temple Gate. So just to share the sort of context, because it's a bit of a unusual site, and that the development's going to be sort of tucked away within some existing development. View from Temple Gate from St Leonards Road. So that's the front elevation of Temple Gate. That's the access to Trinity Yard. This is just the edge of the existing front elevation, and that's Trinity Yard. So there's some commercial buildings there with parking space. So they're currently open. It's open to the public to use. So going to the plans, here on the left we have the existing ground floor plan, the extent of the development outlined in red. So there will be a single story, well, ground floor extension. You can see that creating a new commercial element at the rear. So the ground floor footprint would be increased. It wouldn't project any further back than the existing rear ground floor footprint here though. So it's infilling this courtyard area that I showed you earlier. This is the existing first floor plan. So if you have a look at the proposed floor plans, you can see this section here is the extent of the first floor rear extension, again tucked in between the existing rear outrigger of the building and the neighbouring property to the south, number 61. This is the roof of the ground floor commercial unit on here, but here you can see there is proposed to be a first floor terrace to act as an amenity space for the residents of this flat here. And this shows the existing proposed second floor plan. So the roof of the building is to be extended here and a dormer window added here. So this creates a flat in the second floor. And this is the terrace, which will act as the amenity, outside amenity area for the residents of this flat. And that is set in between the roof of the existing rear outrigger of the application building and the 3-story wall of number 61 St Leonards Road. Actually, just going back to the slide before, there are privacy screens proposed on either side of the first floor roof terrace, here and here. This is a new window as well. Just want to make it really clear what changes are being proposed. And in terms of the roof terrace second floor level, there are no privacy screens because we've got the existing development either side to sort of protect amenity, overlooking, etc. This is the existing front elevation. There are no changes to the front elevation, so that's to remain as it is. That's the existing side elevation that you can view from the access to Trinity Yards. So in terms of changes, there is an additional window here to serve the first floor apartment. There are some ground floor fenestration changes as well. Oh, you can just see the edge of the privacy screen for the first floor terrace. This is the existing and proposed rear elevation. So the development, as I was saying earlier, is set in between number 61. That's the neighbouring building to the south, and the existing outrigger of the application building. So the development is in between those two existing structures. So that's the ground floor section with the first floor roof terrace above. That's your roof extension with the second floor terrace there. So shown it's sort of set in between two existing developments. Oh, and that's the view of changes to the roof plan. So existing roof plan proposed, you can see the roof extension creates a small crown roof and a dormer window. That's the terrace, the second floor, that's the terrace for the first floor. These are quite good cross sections. So this one is looking south. So Chesterton Place is the residential development beyond. So it shows you where the privacy or the terrace would be in relation to that. So privacy screens set to 1.7 meters above ground level, so that's above eye level. This is a cross section showing the privacy screen and roof terrace as viewed from these, facing north. So that's the second floor roof terrace here, so a cross section of it, so it's facing onto the existing outrigger there, and you can just see the edge of the privacy screen. So that's your first floor roof terrace there, so mainly looking onto the existing outbuilding. Just finally, some additional elevations from within the internal courtyard, and another elevation here showing the existing first floor side window to be changed to a door and the privacy screen there, and then a coloured rear elevation showing proposed materials to be matching the existing development. The proposed bin and cycle stores are to be provided in the existing garages in Trinity Yard to the rear here. And that's it for the presentation. So it's recommended for approval. There's considered to be limited harm on the conservation area. That limited harm, or that less than substantial harm at the lower end of the scale, is considered to be outweighed by the public benefits of the case. Public benefits of the proposal, which in this case are the addition of 4 residential units, a ground floor commercial unit within a town centre location. There's biodiversity net gain, and there are an energy statement to show a reduction in carbon emissions, and Section 106 to secure the carbon contribution towards the carbon offset fund. So it's recommended for approval subject to that Section 106 agreement. Thank you,
Chair. Thank you. So we have 2 public speakers this evening. First of all, we have a member of the public. Please excuse me if I say your name wrong. Luke Juby. Thank you. Would you like to come forward? You have 3 minutes. You'll be given a 1-minute warning, and your time starts when you start speaking. Thank you.
Luke Juby, Director of Templegate. This development has received 28 written objections. Just one of those, my own, speaks for 12 neighbouring properties. The objections are about external noise, privacy and parking. The proposed large roof terraces will without question create noise issues with barbecues and parties. The council has noted that this area receives a lot of complaints about noise. The yard acts as an amphitheatre for all noise. There are no legal roof terraces in this area. The council has stipulated noise containment provisions on the previous application, noting its concerns for the property's need for new acoustic insulation to contain internally generated noise. but it appears to have overlooked the issues of the outdoor spaces in this new application. There can be no containment for external noise. This is the quiet side for the surrounding developments where master bedrooms face. These outdoor terraces, or the down one, the bottom one, will be mere feet from Chesterton-Place windows. This will breach their privacy, being on the same level and looking directly into their properties at 1.7 metres. I'm taller than that. No one at Chesterton-Place was notified. The north-facing window will also breach the privacy of 7, 9 and 11 Temple Gate, looking directly out towards their bedrooms. A number of current north-facing windows are frosted, and no mention has been made regarding the changing of these. Not mentioned earlier, but the new north-facing entrance will open up dangerously into a busy, narrow thoroughfare. It will create noise from all of us for day and night, with sound reverberating off that 4-storey wall opposite. The applicants say there is no parking currently associated with the building, but that's not true, as they rent spaces to the current commercial units, as you saw in the pictures. The application also states that no parking is needed for this area, but then the question is who owns all the cars in the area? Today I walked around our block and there were 16 cars parked on double yellows. My brother's a fireman and he tells me constantly that there's no way he's getting a fire engine down our roads in an emergency. The council have stipulated a space for vehicles to turn. Sorben will not continue to police this. You could actually see in your picture that someone's actually parked in the turning circle at the moment on that picture.
1 minute remaining.
The applicants have already had plans approved for 3 flats for this area. This new application attempts to squeeze in the 4th flat, adding another 2 possible cars to the area, 2 noisy outdoor terraces that will affect 28 neighbouring properties. It breaches the privacy of properties to both the north and south and adds a dangerous new entrance. The previously approved application has none of those issues. And you can just see in those pictures, there will be cars parking and reversing out past that front door. And if anything happens to anyone there, and then they'll be reversing out also straight across the public walkway. It's crazy. The current entrance is on the south side, safely tucked away, and that's on the previous application as well. It makes no sense to have that doorway there. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and now we have Mark Alloway speaking for the applicant. Again, you have 3 minutes and you'll be told when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. My name is Mark Alloway and I'm the applicant in this matter. I would like to thank the members of the Planning Committee for allowing me to speak here this evening with regard to the planning application at 59 St Leonards Road, Windsor, as described by your planning officer in the report before you. You will have seen from the case officer's report that the council recommended this application for approval, and within the report there are clear reasons as to why the development is considered acceptable and accords with the policies as set within the borough local plan. This planning application is looking to make improvements to the prior approval consent granted in December 2022, which allows the conversion of the upper parts of this building into 3 flats. This application is looking to provide a larger retail unit at 59A St Leonards Road, with the provision of a small retail extension. This will allow the current tenant access to internal WC storage and workshop area, which they don't currently have. They currently cross the courtyard outside of the building to access these facilities. In turn, this will allow a further small business to occupy that external workshop when it becomes vacant. Within the upper parts, we are looking to make a small residential extension above the retail unit to provide a further flat with the provision of 2 small terrace private amenity areas for 2 of these flats, which we regard as an improvement to the outside amenity provision for these flats compared with the prior approval granted in 2022. The extension and terraces are to be developed within a recess to the existing building and are not overlooked from the neighbouring residential properties at Chesterton Place or Temple Gate. The only overlooking windows are planning approved obscure glass windows to kitchens and bathrooms at Chesterton Place. Irrespective of this, we have provided privacy screens to the private amenity area at the lower level. I noticed that concerns were raised about parking and cars exiting this site. We have no proposals for cars to be associated with this development. This building's been empty for a couple of years now. It used to be an old taxi office. We have worked closely with the Royal Borough planning officers to make this application, ensuring the design of the building meets policy requirements. Therefore, in line with the officer's recommendation, I ask you, the committee, vote in favour of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll open it up for member discussion. Who'd like to go first? Councillor? Sorry, were you indicating?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Councillor Carpenter. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm surprised that the people from 61 aren't here to state any thing. I can't remember whether I've read whether they have complained or not, but okay, but does it not block their light in 61 from the extension? It looks like it does.
So number 61, so I just clarify, all neighbours adjoining the red line boundary were notified and a site notice was displayed, so we've fulfilled our statutory duty to consult. The building to the south, number 61, is this building here. So I think you saw from the photos, so it's this building here. Yeah. So there's no windows. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's.
Councillor Davis.
So I asked about the noise in an email earlier this week and was told that it'd be impossible to impose a condition to strict noise levels from external sources because it'd be impossible to test and therefore not compliant with the National Planning Policy Framework. We also went on to say that there are mitigations with it being in the middle of a town centre and a car park and so on. And I just wanted to address those, and I don't think I'm not too worried about the increase in noise. Who's going to use a balcony in a shady part of a car park that much?
Councillor Buckley.
If I could ask the officer to go back to the new door that's being put into the side of the yard, which is the new access point for the additional flat, I believe. That's the door there, I think, isn't it? To the left there, that goes out onto the commercial yard.
Yeah. With
commercial vehicles going up and down there. Does that actually set back from the main property? I think that's just a straightforward wall, isn't it? The application is saying it's a straightforward wall. Should be walking straight out into a commercial area. There wouldn't be any stopgap for the residents to have any protection.
So
that is a concern.
Just to clarify, the ground floor is commercial.
Yeah.
So
that's not the access to the flats, access to the commercial site.
And there are already access points on the ground floor there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's my.
This new door here.
Yes.
Yeah, all glass. So that's the side, isn't it? That's down where cars go.
My main point, which I was raising, was the concern of someone stepping out of that door into a commercial space with no protection. That obviously stood out for me.
I think the main point is there are access points along that elevation already, and there's limited. I know there are vehicle movements associated with the uses already. Whether it's an access point for the commercial property or for the residents, it's already an access that's used by both cars and pedestrians. I suppose the other thing to point out is there are existing, the existing use is a commercial and residential use. There is a permitted development fallback position. Permission has been granted via the general permitted development order for 3 flats.
Yeah, that was my other point. Is the 3 flats already approved?
Approved.
This is for an additional
one, yeah.
flat. My second point in regards to the doors was, I think you're right, they are in commercial use, but one was used as a stable door previously by the retail site. It was a cafe, I believe, and it was a stable door to stop people walking out into the main freeway into oncoming commercial traffic and vans, etc., going through to the commercial units at the back there, because knowing the site as it was. If that's not an access to a flat, then obviously, my concerns are. But if it is a concern, it is going to the flat. I'd like clarification on that.
This door here.
Yes, it's the one going out into the yard. Yes.
Yeah, this door here, I believe, is it's accessing an internal stairwell, which would go
to the flat.
To the first floor flat.
Yeah, that which is so you've got residents who aren't maybe used to going out into a commercial space, walking straight out into it.
Yes, but that's part of the development. That's what's being proposed, and it's not considered that is a issue of pedestrian or highway safety.
Julian?
Oh, hello. Yes. I have a few questions for clarification. The first just is related to noise, and I know we've been in touch, but just for the record, it'd be good to just in this meeting talk about this. I can see that there are conditions relating to internal noise, in terms of insulation, for example, and also aircraft noise. There's what's been mentioned in the meeting is the potential for noise from the roof terraces. I think now just to state a sort of an interest here, or we used to live very, very close to this. In fact, we used to live just on the other side of this in Temple Road. I mean, we had a garden. I just wonder if there's any difference between the sort of normal use that, people having barbecues in their normal garden, as it were, versus these terraces. Is there a difference? And is that something that we can, that we can talk about in terms of the from a planning perspective? Second question, just to clarify on the overlooking, there seems to be a difference of opinion between the speakers. One was saying, well, there isn't any overlooking, but we're going to have privacy screens just to sort of mitigate that as well. But maybe just can we clarify what our view is on the level of overlooking, and if those screens do mitigate any any reasonable worries that we've got. And my final question is about the turning circle, as it were. So we can see that there's condition 8 being added about the I'm sorry to say what it says, condition 8 about the turning space shall be kept free and available for vehicles using the yard. Now, I think there's a question about enforcement on that. Now, obviously, we can't be there 24/7 to check, but presumably that means that they can't build something there, or they can't sort of put their bins there all the time, and that's why we've got things. Again, can we clarify that?
Any other queries or questions to add in that, so we can just take a few things? Anybody else? Yes, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I think just echoing Councillor Buckley's concerns about this side door. That's my main concern on this. I think for me, the noise, there would be normal environmental protections if somebody was making a lot of noise late at night. You can sort of file a complaint, or so I think that there should be normal environmental protections around that. I think the side door, that's my main, I think, a concern.
Wait, can I just clarify? This is this side wall is where the cafe used to have the serving hatch, and people used to stand and queue for their coffee in this area. This is where the door is we're looking at. So presumably it's not that busy if people were able to stand for safely and queue for coffee. I don't know. Can we just have some clarification on those points that have been asked, please?
Yes, thank you. I think if I cover the noise and amenity space point of view first, So I think it's always difficult in these circumstances. Every time we deal with a planning application, there's a change, and it's clearly the change that the neighbours are concerned with. But when we look at a planning application, what we have to look at is there is a change, but does that change constitute something that would represent planning harm? And the planning policies on noise talk about planning decisions ensuring that new development doesn't have unacceptable impacts on health or living conditions, and mitigating and minimising potential adverse impacts resulting from noise or new development. And I think the thing is, we're talking about here outdoor amenity space which is incidental to residential use, and therefore it's the same use class you would expect to find this type of provision in any residential area. Those of us who live in houses have gardens right next door. Our neighbours will have barbecues. If you look at our design guide, we encourage provision of balconies and outdoor amenity spaces next to each unit. So by virtue of our own planning policies, every time we approve a residential unit, we're expecting it to be near this type of space. And the reasonable use of that space shouldn't cause any adverse impacts on the amenity of the neighbouring occupiers. It's just the use we would expect in a residential area. Now, if the concern is about inappropriate use of that space, excessive barbecues or excessive parties late at night, they're things that there's other legislation to cover. The Environmental Protection Act, for example, if someone was regularly having noisy parties or barbecues into the early hours of the morning on this roof terrace, it would be something that could be dealt with under that legislation. But I don't think it's a matter of concern tonight. The reasonable, normal use of these terraces shouldn't cause any amenity issues for the residents. I was going to ask Joe to cover the next point.
Yeah, I'll just come in on loss of privacy, wasn't it, and overlooking. So I think the main things are the first floor terrace, this additional window, and the second floor terrace. So it's the view of officers that for this first floor terrace, you've got a proposal for 2 privacy screens to be erected either side to a height of 1.8 meters. So you wouldn't be able to see above those privacy screens, and that's to be secured by a condition. In terms of the second floor terrace, as I said in the presentation earlier, you've got that very tall 3-storey flank wall of number 61 to the side, and then the roof of the existing outrigger, to the north side. So the terrace is sort of in between those 2 existing structures, so you can't look either side. There is the new window on the north elevation. So there is that additional scope for views out of the building. It has to be considered alongside existing fenestration along that north boundary, that north elevation along here. So there's some first floor windows, there's a second floor window there. So the new window would be going in here. Temple Gate is to the north. There's a blank wall there and a blank wall there. There are some windows in there. This window would be at an oblique angle from those windows, and in addition to existing fenestration. So officers consider the level of overlooking. It comes back to what Adrian said, what's the planning harm? There is a change, but officers don't consider the harm in terms of overlooking would be detrimental to the living conditions of neighbouring occupants. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Buckley.
I've just got one more question, because we've obviously got the pre-application there of the 3 flats, and we've not seen that application, because not looking at that tonight. I appreciate that, but just to understand it, it's that additional flat with additional entrance and the retail commercial extension at the back, which we're looking at. Obviously, the commercial extension makes sense. It's employment. It's all those other things that we really, really support. It's just this, obviously, one additional flat-free entrance that obviously is of concern. I take on board Councillor Tizzy's comments about people already using it for commercial, but when you've got half a dozen people standing there already when a van pulls in, a driver would be relevant to the people already standing there. Whereas if you're just stepping out your front door into a space with a van coming down, it's a totally different aspect of danger. So I just really wanted to clarify the 3 flats. So if I could put in my mind the 3 flats that are approved and the residents of less objections would have, it would be just that 1 flat is extended over the commercial property at the back as we're looking at now. Yeah. So that would be it. If that flat was removed, it'd just be the commercial property at the back, but the application is to have with the flat on top.
I don't have the plans for the prior approval application.
No, but I'm just trying to, I don't know.
It's essentially for the conversion of the existing building. So there's no external changes for that prior approval application.
Okay.
It's ground floor stays as it is, and then the first and second floor are converted to 3
But
units.
previously, it didn't have that extension for the commercial unit at the back.
No,
Which took up the
no. So
spaces.
you wouldn't,
Okay.
That's
All right,
the
no,
full-
that's what I want you to understand in my mind,
right,
what I'm looking at, what's already been approved to what's been asked for now. Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. To me, this feels like an increased densification in the area, which is, it feels to me like it's one step too far. You know, the 3 existing flats may be okay, but this extra one, or it's kind of mixed in, because there's like the additional terraces for the existing flats, which is good, and then there's the fact that it's a 4th flat, which is more traffic and more going to be more just activity going on in the area. And I know it's just 1 flat and there's not very many people there, but it just feels like we're making this a very dense urban living environment. And you know, there are places all over the place with developments like this, but it doesn't seem like something that we should really be encouraging. And because this is wrapped up in, like, there's the business development, which is good, but the flat is probably not good. So it's a question of weighing up the balance between them. And I'd be concerned, as the resident said earlier on, about parking in the area and stopping fire engines getting down there if there was a problem with fire, or if there was an incident there. So I just think it's like one step too far with the whole development, really, on balance, and that probably where they've got to approval for right now is probably enough, and then we just draw a line and say that's where we should really stop. It just feels like we're making it too much of a dense development, really, overall. So I think on balance, although there's some business improvement there, I prefer, I think on balance, to see this come back as separate applications for the business development piece, which is the infill at the back, so that can be done. But because there's 3 things in here, really, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag of, we just seem to have been given a mixed bag of things to approve all at the same time, whereas in reality there are 3 different things. There's the business piece of this, which I think could go through easily. I think there's the terraces and the additional flat, and I think I'd prefer to see it as different things, so that we could approve them separately and individually rather than in one application. But you know, we've got what we've got, so we can't chop and change there. But that's where I'm coming from, I think, and I think we need to be just careful of it.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Is refusal based on density defensible in court?
No, I mean, if you want to refuse an application, you have to identify an actual planning harm and link that to policies. So, you know, the answer is when people talk about density, there's never really an actual planning harm coming from density. The planning harm is something that might come about by virtue of the level of built form that's there or the activity generated. So, you know, you would have to identify an actual planning harm, whether it be noise, highway safety, etc. You can't just say, I feel this is too dense. I think there are also some complications if you actually look at the proposed ground floor plan, some of the changes to the commercial layout to make that work, as the different commercial units and the commercial space actually are dependent on changing the access route to the residential. So it's not as, it is one application. It's not as simple as separating things out.
I'd just like to talk about the parking, because I actually agree with Mr. Dewey that, you know, the area, we all know it, there's a lot of on-street parking, people spill out into the area. And obviously that's something that's not being dealt with by condition or through the planning application. Could you just talk us through how that could be managed realistically? What can we do to try and mitigate against parking? Obviously it's designed as a sustainable location, so it's within walking distance of the town centre. It's, you know, it's the kind of development that is supposed to encourage people to not have a car, but we all know that people live in the town centre and own cars. So what can we do?
So I think you've said it. It's a town centre location. This development isn't proposing any parking for the residents. The 3-unit scheme that's already been granted, again, didn't propose any parking for the residents. So we're essentially talking about another unit with no parking in a town centre location, which officers feel is appropriate, given the sustainability policies that we were talking about earlier, the fact that we've only got maximum car parking standards. There's no breach of policy here. I think officers have set out in the highway section that there's other things that residents can do in town centre locations, which should fall outside the remit of the planning authority, and that may be to apply for a parking permit, but that's a sort of separate matter that's dealt with, different regulations. But here what we're saying is for this development in this sustainable location immediately in the town centre, it's appropriate for these units not to have access to a parking space connected with this planning application.
Do we know on that plan there, you can see some parking bays on the left as you drive into Trinity Yard. Who do they belong to? They're not associated with this property, or?
Not associated with this application, no. So there are existing parking spaces to the north there in connection with other commercial properties.
Any other questions or comments from members? No. Devon.
So it seems like none of us entirely happy with this, but we can't find any reason that would hold up against appeal to refuse it. So I would propose that we agree with the planning officer's decision.
Julian.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Councillor Davis has said. Actually, I have there are concerns, but I'm satisfied certainly with the responses, the condition, the issues that were raised before overlooking. I think I'm happy that that is sufficiently dealt with. I think noise is an interesting one, but as has been said, there is an existing application for 3, which they will almost certainly go with. So we're talking about 1 extra house here. I think I'm worried that if we refuse this, well, that they could just go with that 3, wouldn't they? Rather than that they might appeal and say, well, actually, we need this. I see a small benefit for either internal, the larger retail unit and the storage. I mean, we lived there. I think in terms of noise, well, we had gardens. From a planning point of view, I respect what I've heard. I feel I sort of had to second what Councillor Devon Davis has said.
Just a quick point, because I know something we're all quite concerned about is that door access straight onto the route there. But if you, sorry, the one we just looked at, the slide before, looking at that where the route of the cars are proposed, you can actually see it's set back. That part of it is actually set back a little bit, isn't it? So I don't know if that's, I mean, it's not ideal, is it? But does that mitigate? You're not literally stepping out into the path of traffic. It's difficult. Yeah. Okay. Well, we do have a proposal. So
we do have a motion on the table, Chair. So it's been proposed by Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Julian Teasey. Motion is to grant planning permission in line with officer recommendations, subject to conditions laid out in the report. So with that in mind, the vote will be voting for to grant planning permission, against to refuse it, for example. So with that in mind, Councillor Buckley, for, against, or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Carpenter?
Against.
Councillor Davies?
For.
Councillor Sharp?
Against.
Councillor Amy Teasey?
For.
Councillor Julian Teasey?
For.
Councillor Wilson?
For.
So it's 4 votes for 4, 3 against, so the motion carries 4-3.
Right, the final item on the agenda this evening is is the recycling site at Windsor Leisure Centre in Stovell Road. It's the cycling. Should I proceed? Should I wait?
Thank you, Chair. So the final item today is a cycle parking hub and pathway to replace the existing recycling units at Windsor Leisure Centre. So these slides show the application site in red, just to the front and side of Windsor Leisure Centre. And here just block plan shows the site enlarged slightly, contains an existing cycling site. As you can see here, and a sort of grass verge to the front, so that's to the front of Windsor Leisure Centre, enclosed by fencing, and that's how it's viewed from the road there. The proposal is for a cycle parking hub, so there's an enclosure there which would allow for cycles to be stored safely, locked away, accessed by an app and CCTV to ensure safe and secure storage of bikes, and a pathway here. There is an existing tree on site which would need to be removed. There is replacement planting as part of the application, which you can see here on this plan. That's just some images of how the cycle parking hub would look. It's an application from the council's infrastructure team, so from our officers who deal with cycling, cycle links, cycle routes within the borough. The site's been chosen specifically as it's considered to be a good location. There would be some timber knee fence railing, and that's a cross-section of the proposed pathway. So it's considered to be a policy compliant development. We haven't had any objections, and the reason it's before you tonight is it's an RBWM application. So as part of the constitution, we need to consider it here. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any guest speakers this evening, so we can go directly to the members' discussion. Councillor Buckley.
We've discussed the fly tipping that's on this site previously with the recycle. We've had a lot of success with 2 sites in our ward by removing the recycling bins, and obviously that fly tipping has stopped. So going back to a point I think previously made, is that what would happen regarding this, and I think we've had great success, and so I welcome this application, and obviously, you know, looking at all the plans, etc. I think it's well needed, and I think Councillor Wilson was mentioning earlier, if we're going to encourage cycling, one of the things we need to encourage is people to still have their bikes when they return to them from wherever they are. Being in Windsor regularly, I see bikes going missing every 5 minutes. I don't know whether it's in our remit, but I'm just asking. I'm presuming this is totally grant funded, and this is just the application that is going forward, and there's no. If it's 100% grant, it's only another question, but I just thought I'd clarify that point.
I don't think we know the answer. We only have the details of the planning application before us.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I do have the answer.
Oh, go on.
Sorry, funding has been secured from Active Travel England for the borough's first secure cycle parking garage. Sorry, I didn't have that to my.
Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've looked at this in some detail, and I know the site very well. The existing recycling centre was seriously abused for many years, so I think in terms of fly tipping and mixed, putting things that shouldn't be recycled in recycling containers. So I think this is definitely an improvement. In terms of the cycling facility itself, I know we've consulted with active travel groups, and ideally it would be a little bit closer to the Windsor Leisure Centre entrance, but that was studied, and I had conversations with the infrastructure team around would that be feasible, and the answer was basically that it would cost an inordinate amount more to effectively re-landscape the area in front of the entrance. So given that this is still very much in the environment of the leisure centre, and there is funding for this and this alone, I consider this a very good facility for people travelling to the leisure centre. This allows people to cycle over from Eton Wick, cycle from all parts of the west of Windsor into the leisure centre, and access the town centre as well with secure facilities. So I very much welcome the application.
Devon.
This seems like a slam dunk approval. It's almost perfect. Let's just approve it. I propose we approve it. Unless you wanted to, Mark. Let's get
I'll
out of here.
second it. Sorry.
Right, so Julian seconded, he's snuck in there, Mark, sorry. I just wanted to make a point that I read in the report that the recycling, because some people might say, but hang on, we're losing recycling, and isn't recycling really good? Obviously, we all know that it was fly tipped, and the things that you could recycle there, you can either recycle at home in your curbside recycling, or actually can be done at Staffordton Way. So although it was a facility, it was abused, wasn't it? So yeah, no, really not a huge loss there. David.
I know we've had a long night, and I don't want to bring up questions for the sake of it, but we're looking at it in daylight here, and I think it looks very safe and secure, and it looks lovely walking around there. I'm just knowing the site fairly well myself. At night time, has the lights been built into the application? Is it going to be well lit and safe and secure? I'm thinking of a lady going there when the gym closes at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, or 5 o'clock at this daylight situation. You know, is there lighting there? If not, can we look at that quickly, just as maybe something that a safety aspect? I don't want to cause more problems for us tonight, but I'm just being realistic of if we're going to approve this application, we should cover all the bases, and if we can add something. It's a secure unit, but is it lit up? That's my main thing.
Well, there's some lighting there as part of the car park. So there is some existing street lighting. There's a CCTV camera as well. It's a secure facility. That's what's being proposed.
Are the cameras on the cycle park store, or are they on the car park?
Mark.
Thank you, Chair. So there's an existing CCTV positioned just sort of slightly to the south of the site, which basically normally points east down Stovell Road. My understanding is there is an additional CCTV built into the facility itself, pointing at the door. So basically, anybody coming in is effectively being recorded. There's and the access is controlled by an app, which you have to have a code for and all the rest of it. So it's quite a modern facility in that sense.
Okay, so if there's no other questions or comments, because I think we all seem to be quite satisfied. Thank you, Mikey.
So we have motion on the table proposed by Councillor Davies and snuck in seconded by Councillor Julian Teasey. The motion is to grant planning permission with conditions listed in section 14 of the report. Councillor Buckley.
4.
Councillor Carpenter.
4.
Councillor Davies.
4.
Councillor Sharp.
4.
Councillor Amy Teasey.
4.
Councillor Julian Teasey.
4.
Councillor Wilson.
4.
Motion carries unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. I've just lost access to the agenda. So have we, on the end of the agenda, I don't have a hard copy. Oh, thank you. Yes, so we've our usual planning decision report and planning appeals received to consider. Any comments or questions on that? No, just noted by all members. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. So that concludes our business for this evening. Thank you very much, members, for your thoughtful discussions and efforts in wading through all the documentation this evening. And thank you very much.